How do? So that creature I talked about yesterday, Neville Husband, an abomination. If you hadn't seen the vlog, he was a paedophile, raper of kids, a rapist, and basically he was a prison officer. He operated for years. People knew about it, and basically got away with it. And the more I think about it, it's an absolute abomination. The prison service should be disgusted with itself. The fact that it was never publicly investigated. Because I'll tell you what, the survivors, victims, whatever you want to call the lads, young lads who suffered, bless them, I'm quite sure they'd have rather had a public investigation where it all come out and an apology from the prison service than a poxy few grand. So a few of the comments I read, somebody said they knew a lad, grew up, never got over the abuse he suffered in that place at the hands of that creature, and died in his 50s of cancer. So sad. Some people have absolute dogs' lives. Another guy, said he come out of it, not too specific, but he come away from that place. It did scar him forever, but he was still around and having what could be described as a normal life. And then sadly, alas, it was early hours of the morning when I was reading him, I couldn't sleep. She was something to do with a compensation, trying to get compensation for people. And the gist of her comment was sickeningly that people made money out of that compensation scheme. And I'm not talking about the lads who it should have gone to, although, like I've said, I'm quite sure they would have rather had it out there rather than a prison service whitewash. So it brought up another question somebody asked about pack mentality. Do I believe in pack mentality in the prison service and the police and the like? Someone messaged me and asked, was the fact that the prison service at that time actively recruited from the army, as it were, ex-squaddies, ex-forces personnel, was that what made it so brutal? No, it weren't. I spoke to a lot of people who were in the armed forces who went in that job. Recent times I've spoke to people who've left because they couldn't deal with the issues that came up and stuff like that. For me, it's about the culture, same as the police. Pike mentality, right? Stanford prison experiment. In the pinned comment, if I can find the original YouTube clip, I'll put a link to that. The Stanford prison experiment, right? Some young American psychologist or psychiatrist, and it was an experiment, decided he was going to create a prison environment and he was going to staff it with volunteers. He actually put an advert out. It was I believe a decent amount of money for students and the like. So he got some takers. So people didn't know at the time what they were signing up for, but he took some on as prison officers, prison guards, whatever you want to call them, and they contributed to building the prison environment. The people who were going to be the prisoners, he went down the route of having them arrested properly by police. They went through a proper procedure and a proper reception procedure as though they were going into prison. Now, there is a more modern film out, give it a watch. Give it a watch. But the original experiment, it was all filmed, commented daily, observations noted. What happened very quickly was people settled into their roles, and some of the officers, prison guards, became cruel quite quickly, sorry. And you know, the gist of it was that, you know, put good people in a bad place and they become bad. That's no excuse. I'm not saying that. You know, I was the same person in prison when I was doing my job as I was on the out. Lots of people were. There were lots of good people. There were lots of people in there who didn't have any skills to be prison officers. I've told you before. You know, no presence, no interpersonal skills, no nothing. But they were good people. As for pack mentality in modern times, most incidents happened on landings, yeah. And the landings are cameraed up. So for me, you know, lots of staff being there, chances are there's going to be some staff who have a good head. CNR situations, control and restraint, you know, I always, until the end, and I will talk about that, not today, but I will talk about that. I always, you know, handled adrenaline and managed it and kept calm. And you can have a calming influence on other people. There was one lad worked on K-Wing, a young lad, just couldn't, whether it was just adrenaline dump, he would lose it, red mist, operational stress. You know, you could see him, you know, you just remove people like that from the incident, take him off, swap him out. We used to do that on K-Wing. You know, the lads who'd been involved in an incident, you might have got a prisoner or lasses under restraint. We might remove them, put fresh staff in there to take them to the seg. You're de-escalating. The other thing is you get a couple of 3 managers probably turning up, you know, and you get one who got some sense, so it was managed well. The danger is when people are going in cells, there's no cameras in cells. Cells aren't mic'd. A lot of prisoners used to be paranoid, you know, about coppers micing the cells up and the like. But going in cells, you know, that's where the danger comes. Pack mentality, yeah, there will be people who are not strong enough of character to be themselves. So I used to call them chameleon officers. You know, if they're working with me, they're good. If they're working on K-Wing with the rest of the staff, they're part of the team. You know, if they're working with some lazy asses or whatever, they'll be lazy. Lots of people like that, you know, you get natural leaders, and then also, sadly, you get, and there were some bullies who, you know, might have an influence on other people, and not in a good way either. So the pack mentality thing, you know, very, very difficult. It's always had a culture issue. Prison, even in my time, plenty of people who were good people, who I worked with, you know, didn't believe I should be writing a book about the prison service, and believe quite firmly that what happens in prison stays in prison. I was never like that. Again, the amount of people who'd say, you know, there's somebody who'd be an absolute knob. Oh, they're a different person on the out. Why? Yeah. The worst bullies were the bullies who got nothing to offer. What do I mean by that? They were shite officers, and they would do bullying in a situation where they could get away with that. You know, maybe 5 staff going in a cell with a prisoner, not someone my size who's going to give them a fight, you know, and they'll big themselves up or whatever. They were the worst. Not pleasant, but again, taking it back, I work with lots of really good people, and like I say, you wouldn't have them down as prison officers. Again, going back to the days, John G. Sutton, who I've interviewed, Strangeways 75 to 85, you know, people say bad things are happening. You know, if you're not saying anything, not doing anything, and he says quite clearly, a lot of people were scared, but if you're not doing anything, then you're as bad as them. Again, you know, if you took all the good people out who were too afraid to do anything or say anything, what's that leave you with? You know, it's a difficult one. A lot of young staff going in the job now, a lot of weak managers, yeah. A lot of people have retired. young governors with no experience, fast-tracked governors with no experience. And I'll say again, I will take a good business manager who's never worked in the prison system, running a jail, you know, someone who's got something about them and can talk to people, rather than somebody who's spent a couple of years going up through ranks because they've got a degree. So yeah, pack mentality. You know, people will make their own minds up about things like that. I feel like I've waffled a bit, but I hope I've answered that question. The email, guys, therealporridge@gmail.com. It's out there now. Get in touch if you want to come on the channel. I'm speaking to people now. You know, again, it's a big thing, this, you know, people putting it out there. A lot of people. I'm interviewing a young lad tomorrow. Going to ring him in a bit. We've never met. We've talked on phone a couple of times. He's got 3 kids and a missus, you know, in his youth, in and out of prison for silly things. You know, his kids one day will be able to see that or whatever. So it is a big thing. But, you know, if you do want to come on the channel and talk, and there's parts of your life you don't want to discuss, that's fine. You know, if your missus phones while we're doing the interview, go and speak to her, that's fine. No studio and no editing. Although the other day with Lee Marvin, we edited a name out. Not a problem with that name, it's just at the minute, obviously lots of people are sort of having digs at other people. So that's the reason I just edited a little bit out. Yeah, weekend, so Friday, there'll be some long content, and Sunday night, Ray Gilbert. So Ray Gilbert, I've already interviewed him. It's very difficult. This lad spent 36 years in jail protesting his innocence. So I've come up with a way to interview him, to get all his points across so people can understand. And then there's lots of things I want to discuss with Ray, because he fought all the way. You know, I've talked about stuff before, dirty protests, cell fires. I've been the good side of the door with a hose pipe, not in the cell. So we'll be having lots of little discussions and putting them out there. Cheers. Thanks for coming.